Grants are one way that nonprofits can raise money to make an impact, but getting grants is easier said than done. One way to make sure you have a better chance of getting a nonprofit grant is to make sure that the grant opportunity is a good fit for your organization in the first place. But how do you do that? That's why in this video, I'm going to share what I've learned from researching and writing hundreds of nonprofit grants about how to find grants that actually fit your mission, that you're going to have a good chance of receiving. And you're actually going to get a behind the scenes look at a real grants database with active grants in it. So let's go. Welcome back. I'm Amber Melanie Smith. I'm a nonprofit founder, social entrepreneur, and social impact YouTuber. I have over 200 educational videos all about nonprofits, fundraising, and more. So be sure to check out the rest of my channel and check out my new website, CHANGEMAKER Cafe, with organized resources all about these topics and more for you to check out and hopefully get some help on your change-making journey. So I want to get right into this and say that the first thing you need to do before you can even research or apply for any grants at all is to make sure that your organization is in the right position to be able to be competitive for grants. You need to have some key documents ready to go, and you also need to have a high level of clarity on some of the things about your organization's mission, goals, and long-term strategy. So step one is to get clear on your organization's goals and needs. So how do you know if your organization is ready to be competitive for grants? The first thing is that you're going to have several key documents already fleshed out, ready to go, and developed by you and your organization's leadership. Here's what those documents are. The first obvious one is your mission and vision statements. Now, these should already be fully developed and hopefully public on your organization's website, but have that text ready to go. Secondly, you want to have your organization's theory of change, strategic plan, or at the very least, like a 1 to 3 year action plan that your organization has laid out or mapped out to reach its outcomes and outputs. Basically, what are your organization's goals for how you're going to work towards achieving your mission in the short term and the long term, so the next couple of years. If you are a food insecurity nonprofit, this might look like how many people you want to serve, how many people you want to try to get out of the cycle of food insecurity through your programs over the next couple of years. You're going to need your list of board members, their roles, their expertise. A lot of grant applications will ask for this list to get a sense of who is behind the organization. You're going to want to have in hand data or metrics about your organization's successes so far. So how many people have you served? Do you have any survey results from the feedback you've collected from them, etc.? Basically, your evidence that your programs are making an impact. And then you want details about the gap. But Amber, what is the gap? I will tell you. The gap is basically the distance between where your organization is and where it wants to go. The most compelling funding requests out there, the ones that are going to grab the most attention from grant funders, are those that clearly spell out your organization's status quo. So where you are now, how many people you're helping now, and the amount of funding it's going to take to get your organization to a point over here where it's helping more people, making a bigger impact. And if you haven't yet worked out how to clearly explain this to a potential funder or really to anyone out there in your community, this is a really important thing you need to do before you can apply for any grants. What does it look like to explain the gap? Let's look at a real life example. There are 10,000 kids in our city who don't have access to a computer. Right now, our nonprofit, with its current budget, can serve about 200 of these kids per year and get them computers. With a grant of $100,000, we could hire a program manager and beef up our program to be able to reach out to more communities and serve over 500 kids per year. So if you didn't catch all that, here is the breakdown of the formula I used to articulate the gap. 1, the problem, aka there are 10,000 kids in our city without computers. 2, what we can do now, or the status quo. We can serve 200 kids with our current budget. 3, how much money we would need to take our organization from this status quo to our next impact milestone. In this case, I said $100,000, but it could be any number based on the full costs of your programming or the capacity that you'll need to build to reach that amount. And 4, how much more could we accomplish if we got that funding? So in this example, 500 plus kids, which is 300 more kids than this hypothetical organization was able to serve before it got the funding. All right, we have got our documents in order. We've got clarity on the funding need and the gap. Now it's time for the next step. Part 2 is all about finding the right grant opportunities. All that prep work you did to make sure your message was clear, that you can articulate your need, that's gonna make this step a lot faster and easier. So how do you do it? The first thing you've got to ask yourself is, what kinds of funding are you gonna be looking for? Now, you can look for all types of funding, but not at the same time, right? So you might need grants over here to beef up your programs. You might need a grant over here for your capital campaign to secure a building. You might need a grant over here to invest in the capacity and infrastructure of your operations. So you're going to find grants of all types out there that might be able to fulfill one of these purposes, but usually one grant can't fit all of these purposes. So if you're going to do that initial search, you've got to at least have a target for that first search. Is it going to be your programming? Is it going to be your operations, etc.? And the next thing here is you want to get clear on how much money you need to be seeking in total for that thing. So take a look at your organization's annual budget and make sure it's clear that you have it divided out amongst these different projects or programs or infrastructure needs, right? So what are the costs that pour into increasing your program size? What is the cost needed to beef up your operational infrastructure? I recommend, and what I've done in the past, is create little sub budgets that pull out the amounts of money I think are going to be directly and indirectly related to each of these columns. That way I have a sense of the full grant amount I would be seeking. Now, it's rare that a grant will cover 100% of everything you need in a particular column, so to speak. So you might be looking at piecing together multiple grants. I mean, hey, if you find a grant that can do it all, awesome. All right, so when you actually go to look for grants, you want to be as specific as possible. I'm going to show you what this looks like in real time. I'll show you a live search for grants here in just a moment. But in general, it's really important not to cast too wide of a net and be really careful not to do what we call chasing the money, which is when you see a grant available for something, but the something is not really what your organization does. So you're very tempted to change what your organization does in order to get that grant. But that's not actually an effective strategy. One, because you might not be the best fit or have the right skill sets or expertise to fulfill that specific grant's parameters anyway. But two, that means you're going to be abandoning your actual mission, which is going to make it harder for you to accomplish your impacts. And when you do something or out of scope for your organization, or when you apply for grants that are out of scope, there's a high chance that you're not going to get that grant because the funders will know how aligned you are based on that application and your track record of success before that. So you don't want to waste your time or the funders by applying for grants that aren't going to be the best fit anyway. So to show you how to find the right grant opportunities, I'm going to demonstrate how I would do this using a grants database tool called Instrumentl, who has graciously sponsored this video so that I can do this deep dive showing you what it would look like to find and assess grants that could be a fit for your organization. But please know that what I'm going to show you could be applicable to your grant search however you do it. So a little bit of background about Instrumentl before we get in here, just so you know what you're looking at. Instrumentl is a pretty robust online grants database and management platform. They help with finding funding, tracking those grant applications, and managing all the processes related to your grants search and applications. I've known about Instrumentl for a while, and I really wanted to partner with them because they really do have one of the most robust grants databases I've seen out there. I like that it's not just a grants database, it also comes with special tools that help you assess if the grant's going to be a likely fit for your organization. So it'll do the legwork for you to analyze a funder's past giving trends, the geographies it likes to fund, the issue areas, if there are similar organizations to yours that have been funded in the past. They also have a feature where you can manage your entire grant application process right there in one dashboard and collaborate with others on your team, which is not really something I've seen with other grants databases I've looked at. So all of this can be a really huge time saver, especially if your organization is applying for a lot of grants. I know grant writers who use Instrumentl have said it saves them multiple hours every week. If you're curious about Instrumentl, here's what I'll say. Go ahead and give it a try. There's a link below where you can get a free 2-week trial to get all access to all of their features. Check it out, search for grants, see how it flows. And if you do decide to use Instrumentl, I also have a code that will get you $50 off the first month. So you can grab that in the description below this video also. All right, let's take a look here at how we would search for grants that would be a good fit for a nonprofit. And to do that, I'm going to use a real life nonprofit example submitted by actually one of you. So thank you for doing that. Let's check out some grants that could fit your organization.
All right, so we are going to be taking a look at an organization that does arts programs for kids in the state of Michigan in the United States, submitted by my friend Kevin. It's a nonprofit arts camp. It's for kids ages 7 to 14. So they have teachers who are either current teachers or retired teachers, provide teaching in art, music, dance, etc. to support these kids. And he's talking a little bit about their scale. So it looks like they serve about 70 kids over these programs. So Kevin is wondering if there are grant opportunities available for an organization like his out there. So given that information, I'm going to plot that into the Instrumentl grants database tool, and we're going to see what comes up as some possibilities for Kevin and his organization. So it's starting out by asking me to describe the project. Based on what I just said the project was about, I'm just going to call this Art Camp for Kids and have their organization in here. And then I've indicated I want both matches. So I want Instrumentl to recommend some grants that they think will fit. And I'm going to want to be tracking my progress on the application for any of these grants. So let's see what it gets us. So this is a nonprofit. We don't need to see grants specific to faith-based. This organization serves kids inside the United States and in specific areas. So I've noted that this takes place in Michigan, and the organization is in Huron County, so I'm going to choose that as well. This is going to narrow down the geographical scope of the grants that we're looking for to see if there are any specific to that area. Let's take a look at the field of work. I can choose arts and culture. Looks like, we can indicate if it's community services, education, health. So this is about the issue areas that the grant is going to cover. Now, I know from the description of the organization that I just gave you, there's some components of arts and there's some components of education in here as well. So let's take a look at the arts category and see which ones we think would be the best fit for what I described. I'm going to say arts and culture access and participation, because we're talking about making sure kids can access the training, the teaching in arts. I heard dance, we'll say maybe some fine art. We'll see what comes up there. Music, performing arts. I'm going to say community art as well. Visual art and youth involvement in the arts. I think that would be a really good fit too. And then let's just see what they have under education to see if there's anything we want to add there. I will call this an after-school program. So we're going to see what they have under education to see if there's anything we want to add there. I will call this an after-school program. So we're going to see what they have under education to see if there's anything we want to add there. I will call this an after-school program. So we're going to see what they have under education to see if there's anything we want to add there. I will call this an after-school program. So we're going to see what they have under education to see if there's anything we want to add there. I will call this an after-school program. So we're going to see what they have under education to see if there's anything we want to add there. I will call this an after-school program. So we're going to see what they have under education to see if there's anything we want to add there. I will call this an after-school program. So we're going to see what they have under education to see if there's anything we want to add there. I will call this an after-school program. So we're going to see what they have under education to see if there's anything we want to add there. I will call this an after-school program. So we're going to see what they have under education to see if there's anything we want to And they said ages 7 through 14, I believe. So I think that's going to be elementary and middle school. That might not be the most perfect fit because these categories might be talking about school-related programs specifically, but let's give it a shot, see what we come up with. All right, 9 fields of work. Grants for professional art and culture organizations. I don't think this really fits. And then the sizes of grants, I mean, no minimum and no maximum. Let's just see what comes up. We're going to use the funds for, let's say, programs and general operating. Let's say these things here. So what kinds of funders would you like to see grants from? All of them, of course. Let's see what comes up. Actually, I'm going to take off federal government. We don't want that. For a small nonprofit, probably state and federal grants are not going to be a good fit because those types of grants require a lot of lift to manage them, report on results. And a small nonprofit like this probably doesn't have capacity. In some cases, grants like this take an entire staff person just to manage the grant. So I'm going to say no to that. And then we're going to see what comes up with here. Now, if you were searching for grants just on Google or using a web search, you would still think of all of the categories and questions that Instrumentl asked me as part of their process. You would still think about all of those questions, and you would use that when you're typing them into the Google search bar. So Instrumentl has sort of automated this process for me, but in the Google search bar, I would type something like youth access to the arts grant in Michigan or in Huron County, United States. And I would have started with that combination of issue area and geographical area just to see what comes up. I'd probably need to do some additional digging and some additional search terms to sort of start to compile a list. But because Instrumentl automated some of that for us, it has now kicked out some results for us to take a look at. Okay, so it is saying we have found 300 plus grants for us to check out. Okay, so it's broken down these grants based on funder matches. So that's a foundation or a grantor who might be aligned. Maybe they don't have a specific active opportunity at that exact moment that you're searching, but maybe you want to flag them for future investigation. And it has funding opportunity matches also. And these are the opportunities that are current and active right now. So let's take a look at those. All right, so here's what I'm looking at. It has all these opportunities here, and it has the deadlines listed. So we have, for example, April 4th. Don't worry about that one right now. Rolling, that means ongoing deadlines. March 8th, rolling. And I have some that are coming up a little bit sooner. So I'm recording this video in late August. So it's telling me that this one is due in just a couple of weeks. So it's got that red deadline there. And I'm going to be assessing which one of these I think might be the most worthwhile for my time applying for them, which ones are going to be the best fit. And I'm going to do that by looking at some of their past giving trends, their data on their 990 showing what kinds of grants they've given out before. Is it to organizations similar to mine? All these things are clues that that funder is interested in what I'm doing financially. And that's a good indicator that I have an increased odds of success for applying for that grant. You can use this filter if you're using a tool like Instrumentl. It might have a filter like this to hone in on the use of the funding. So I'm going to say this is going to be for project or program, and that narrows down the results a little bit further. It's also sorted currently by best match. I can sort by deadline. Again, this is in tools like Instrumentl. If you're just using Google search for searching for your grants, you'll need to find the information about the deadlines on each of the funders' websites usually. Okay, so I'm going to hone in on this one grant. It's called the Huron County Community Foundation. Now, this one does say agricultural experience grant, but it piqued my interest, and I'm going to give it a deeper look because this is very specific to the geographical area that we've identified for this organization, Huron County. And when you look at their information, it does say that arts and culture and education are part of the issue areas that they're interested in. So here on a tool like Instrumentl, you can see already broken down for you the 990 snapshot. 990s are, again, the tax form that private foundations or nonprofits have to submit every year to the IRS. So for foundations, the 990 will show you what dollar amount they're giving out each year in total, and usually as a breakdown of the grant organization or the organizations that have received the grant funding. So we can see that they have strategic priorities here. So they want to retain and attract talent in the workforce, create vibrant and dynamic communities, and cultivate an environment for business development. I could potentially see a youth program for the arts fitting into the vibrant and dynamic communities strategic goal here. And under interest areas, like I said, they do flag arts and culture and education, and also working with youth. So this is a maybe for me. This is someone that I would save and take a look at. Now this deadline's coming up pretty soon, so if it were me, I would apply very quickly. But that's one that I would take a look at further. Now we want to talk a little bit about a funding opportunity on this list that I would assess as probably not worth my time to apply for. It might have some overlap with the issue areas that I'm looking at, but when I look at some of the other details available here on this grant, I'm thinking probably the odds are low for this particular organization. So this is the Grammy Museum Grant Scientific Research Project. Already the title of the grant doesn't feel like it fits to me. Now it does have music as one of the issue area matches. So if you take a look at some of these other details, the location of the project is Canada and the United States. So they have a pretty broad reach. A lot of their past grantees here are in California, Texas, and Florida. So they don't call out Michigan, which is the location of the organization that we're using for this case study. You can see that they're really heavily involved in things related specifically to the Grammys. Grant funds have been utilized to preserve private collections in the Library of Congress. That seems a bit out of scope for the nonprofit we're talking about. In addition to that, it looks like it's requesting an LOI, which is a letter of inquiry or letter of intent, which means you're not actually applying for the grant in one application. You're submitting a letter to see if the foundation might be interested in you, and then typically they would invite you to submit a full application. So I would assess that this particular grant is not worth the time to apply for this one. So just as a recap, if you are using a grants database tool like Instrumentl, then you can use the filters available to target by issue area, geographical area, and size of grant. Make sure it's a good fit for your organization. A smaller organization, as much as it might dream of getting $1 million grant right off the bat, might be a better fit or more competitive for a smaller grant, maybe $10,000 to $20,000 to start. And also, regardless of what tool you're using, if you're just using the internet to search for grants and create your own spreadsheet or list of prospects, you always want to take a look at the funder's website. Remember that funders are human too, so they have stories and backgrounds and motivations, and learning about them and their human stories and why they give, why they started the foundation to begin with, can give you a lot of great insights about whether your values aligned and might be a good fit for that funding opportunity as well. And of course, with any grant application you decide you want to give a try, thoroughly reading through the RFP request for proposal, the application, to make sure that you have all the materials needed to submit a successful application. We talked earlier about needing a list of your board members in many cases. You've got to have your organization all buttoned up, the clarity on the gap and all of that. So making sure you have all that stuff ready for the RFP and answering other common questions, which I cover in some other videos, but things like, how will you be financially sustainable after the grant ends? Because grants aren't usually forever.
At this point, maybe you found a handful of grants that you suspect might be a good fit for your organization, but how do you know if they are for sure? So in this part 3, it's all about assessing the potential of each grant. Here's a checklist. First, as we've been discussing, you want to make sure that that specific grant opportunity is a good fit with your program, project, or budget need that we discussed before. Does your program or project address the outcomes desired in the grant application? And also, does that grant allow for the specific types of activities that your organization does through the program you'd be applying for? For example, let's say your organization does some advocacy. Does the grant allow for advocacy? Does it fund that type of activity? So making sure that those things are a good fit, that you'd be able to adhere to all of those requirements and the vision for the grant. The second thing here is your organization's capacity to deliver on the outcomes of the grant. I have spoken to many nonprofits who just refuse to apply for government grants because they come with such big strings attached sometimes, and the applications are so robust and can be dozens and dozens of pages, and also the reporting requirements for those types of grants would essentially require a full-time position just to do the reporting. So if you come across a grant like that, even if it's a lot of money, really take a hard look at it and think, do we actually have the time and capacity to fulfill the reporting requirements and everything involved with managing the grant if we did get it? So this is really important. It's something that Instrumentl also recommends, is just check. Does your organization have the staffing, the time, the technology required to fulfill all these grant requirements, especially if that specific grant won't cover everything you would need to manage the grant, which they often don't. All right, at this point, I'd love to hear, are grants part of your nonprofit's fundraising strategy? Share some of your questions, your comments, anything we didn't cover in this video in the comments below here, and let's have a conversation. And for funding opportunities and insights on nonprofit leadership and social entrepreneurship, don't forget to join my newsletter, Changemaker Mondays. It's a weekly newsletter where you get all these tips and resources. Thanks as always for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.